Now to the murder of young mum Vitalija Baliutaviciene. The 28-year-old Lithuanian moved to Peterborough 3 years ago to start a new life with her son. Matthew picked up the story of how this unprecedented case relied on the damning secret contained within a little sat-nav box, just like this one.
What we learned about that man is that he has no remorse and he is a dangerous, cold-hearted, manipulative killer.
"28-year-old Vitalija Baliutaviciene moved from her native Lithuania to Peterborough in 2010. Working all the hours she could to provide for her 9-year-old son, she was described as a caring mum who got on with everyone she met. So when she disappeared the following year, it was completely out of character, and police immediately feared the worst.
One of the most striking elements of this investigation is an early interview with Vitalija's son, and he said, without any prompt, that he thought that the reason his mum was missing was because his dad had killed her.
I was heard him say it. He was going to tell my mum and leave me at the children's home.
Ex-husband Rimas Venclovas subjected Vitalija to a life of violence and fear. Despite the fact they'd divorced, he followed her to Peterborough.
He said they couldn't let go.
In February 2011, Rimas was arrested and bailed after assaulting Vitalija. But before more could be done, he jumped bail and fled to Lithuania. Meanwhile, Vitalija tried to make a fresh start. 6 months later, she left her house for work as normal. But she never arrived. A day after, she was reported missing. Police phoned Rimas to see if he knew of Vitalija's whereabouts.
We were getting a foreign ringtone from that telephone call. But when we did manage to speak to him, he was adamant that he hadn't been to the UK since February.
But as they investigated further, they discovered he had travelled to the country the day before she vanished.
We were able to show that his mobile phone had received a welcome to the UK text message, and it was indicative of him being in the area of Dover.
So they checked the documents of all those travelling on ferries to Dover at that time.
Rimas didn't appear on the passenger manifest, but Rimas Venclovas did, and when we examined further that individual, what we found was somebody who looked very much like Rimas. When we explored vehicle details, what we found was a Lithuanian registered green Mercedes Vito van with a very distinctive number plate ANU666. That vehicle was associated to Rimas Venclovas.
Also, CCTV on Vitalija's route to work revealed something alarming.
I could see that the person matched Vitalija's description. She was being forcibly dragged off the street, clearly against her will. I could see that the man that grabbed the person I thought was Vitalija had striking similarities in physique to that of Rimas. I had a very bad feeling that something really significantly bad had happened to Vitalija.
Officers later found more CCTV showing Venclovas' van driving away from Thistlemore Road 58 minutes after Vitalija vanished.
He'd lied about being in the UK. His mobile phone was his. He'd changed his name and he'd come into the UK in a vehicle that we knew nothing about. And on that basis, I formed the opinion that actually in the absence of Vitalija's body, he was responsible for her murder.
Venclovas was arrested in Lithuania, and a month later, he was extradited to the UK. His van was seized, but no forensic evidence was found. But among Venclovas' belongings was an item that would become the key to unlocking the whole investigation. Officers found one of these, an ordinary sat-nav, and the closer they looked at it, the more clues it revealed. Venclovas had typed in locations around Peterborough on the sat-nav, marking them as good and maybe in Lithuanian.
That got me quite excited about the fact that maybe it's been used in some sort of pre-planned operation before Vitalija went missing, and perhaps they were even sites that her body might be deposited at.
While they waited for further analysis from the sat-nav, police searched the sites around Peterborough that Venclovas had pinpointed, hoping it would lead them to Vitalija's body. But she was nowhere to be found. By now, Venclovas was back in the UK, charged with kidnap and murder. As his trial loomed, detectives got the key evidence they needed. The full data from the sat-nav was back.
It was a revelation. Actually, what we found was that this tiny little device had captured months of history of Rimas using the device, and indeed showed the entire route from Lithuania, from his home address, all the way into the United Kingdom to Peterborough.
Critically, the sat-nav data proves Venclovas was in the area at the time Vitalija was abducted.
At around 5:20, I know that Vitalija was taken from the street. 58 minutes passes before the same van is seen leaving Thistlemore Road. Shortly after, the sat-nav data takes us on a route around Peterborough, and that started to allow us to really focus in on likely places where he would have been interested in leaving Vitalija's body.
The sat-nav also showed Venclovas' return journey back to Lithuania, and as searches for Vitalija's body in the UK drew a blank, police began to fear she could be further afield.
It then became a potential reality that actually, against all the odds, he'd actually taken her out of the UK. That could be anywhere in France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Germany, Poland, or even as far as Lithuania.
The coordinates from the sat-nav were sent to police across Europe. If the body was discovered along that route, it could be Vitalija.
Even without Vitalija's body, I was confident that we had a good case against Venclovas. But from a personal perspective, a conviction at that stage was only half the battle. Actually, what was more important was to be able to locate Vitalija and provide the comfort and the ability for a family to grieve, knowing what had happened to their daughter.
Then, just weeks before the trial was due to start, the crucial breakthrough came. Vitalija's body was found 900 miles from where she'd been abducted.
I'll never forget the moment when I read the email to say that a female had been found at exactly the location of one of the stops that the sat-nav had recorded in what is a managed forest in a town called Rotor on the western side of Poland. Vitalija had been violently strangled. She had been murdered in the back of that van, just a few hundred yards away from where she lived. You look then at the sheer cold-heartedness of a man who is prepared to drive her hundreds of miles across 5 or 6 countries and leave her buried in the middle of a forest in Poland. Just goes to show the depravity of a man who thought he'd got away with a perfect murder.
Rimas Venclovas was handed a life sentence for the kidnap and murder of Vitalija, with a minimum term of 20 years. He thought he'd done enough to ensure that she would never be found, but he had no idea that his own sat-nav was leaving behind an electronic footprint that would prove beyond doubt that he had killed her.
Venclovas killed Vitalija. In doing that, left their son effectively an orphan. And he is a dangerous, cold-hearted, manipulative killer.
So Matthew, the mobile phone records were important, the CCTV footage was very important, but the real goldmine was the sat-nav stuff.
Yes, Venclovas knew he'd be the main suspect, but he was convinced he could murder and leave no trail. He was incredibly arrogant. He'd even done a complete dummy run, slipped in and out of the country in the weeks leading up to the actual abduction. But that arrogance evaporated the moment detectives told him they had the sat-nav. He knew the sat-nav held all the secrets.
So the sat-nav had all this raw data, but at this point they still didn't know where Vitalija was.
Yeah, it was still a mammoth task, but with this type of sat-nav, so long as it was turned on, it recorded every detail of every journey, not just the locations he typed in, everything. I mean, it was difficult. It took two sets of experts months to retrieve all the data, but when they did, it gave them the roads he'd used, where he'd stopped, and crucially, how long he'd stopped for. So in one place, Venclovas had driven down a dirt track between two fields and waited there for 9 minutes. It looked like a perfect place to bury a body. So when detectives searched that area, they even had one of the team carry another on his shoulder to see how far you could get with a body in 9 minutes, and that's what they concentrated on, and that's how they approached it. One location after another, then one country after another, until they found her in Poland.
He was then found guilty. After that, it was a life sentence.
Yes, life, and the judge described the murder as coldly planned and ruthlessly executed, and he said he had no doubt that Venclovas had held her throat and kept her between life and death to make sure she knew what was about to happen. It's worth just saying that Venclovas is planning an appeal on the basis that prosecutors cannot be certain in which country Vitalija was actually killed in. I mean, we saw in the film, the police are convinced she was killed in those 58 minutes, in that van, on that street in Peterborough. So it's an appeal we'll keep an eye on.
Sure, thank you. Thanks very much.